Nighttime routine. All right, I've got the man, Ben Greenfield, really kind of like the godfather of routines in a lot of ways. This is like what I'm looking you for.
For better or worse.
Yeah. We did a previous video on morning routine, but I think the thing that's big right now, people want to know evening routines. I saw something recently. You had a pretty robust like evening travel routine, but I want to talk a little bit more about like your at-home evening routine, when everything is just set where you want it, families where you want it, and then maybe if we have time, we'll dive into what you do when you're on the road or on the go. I want to mention I popped a 30% off discount link down below for Thrive Market. Now, Thrive Market is an online grocery store, but it's not like a regular grocery store. It's set up by different diet categories. Okay, so you've got keto, you've got vegan, you've got paleo, you've got different diet categories. So it allows you to get the best quality foods, okay, no preservatives, no garbage. You can stock up your whole house, not just your pantry. They have sustainable meat and seafood options, so you can stock up your fridge. They're working on really cool options as well. So you're looking at just everything you can get in a store, essentially, that's gonna be in frozen or in the regular section, delivered to your doorstep. And with this link, you save 30% off your entire first grocery order plus a free $50 gift. So I've also created my fasting bundle, which is things that I recommend people get for breaking their fast and also for sustaining their eating period with the right kind of foods. So that link is in the top line of the description right below this video. I definitely recommend you check them out. They are a sponsor on this channel, but they have been for like 5 or 6 years now. And it is definitely where you want to be going as pretty much your one-stop shop, almost entirely your one-stop shop for what you can get delivered to your doorstep for your intermittent fasting routine.
Netflix and popcorn, baby. Next question. Let's see. I don't know. When do you classify evening? I guess like a lot of people, of course, say, oh, your evening starts in the morning, and then follow that up by saying get natural sunlight during the day, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that horse has been kicked to death. And
fair enough. Let's say
like it starts in the morning. So yeah.
Let's in this case, let's say from like 3 p.m. on.
Okay. All right. So I'm usually working. Like the last time you and I talked, we finished up. I told you I'd take a quick little siesta after lunch. And so then after that, I'll usually do something to just like get the engine started again. In the spring or the summer, I'm usually just jumping in the cold pool and splashing around for a few minutes to get ready for the second part of the day. In the winter, a lot of times I'll just kind of do a stretching and a foam rolling session for like 10, 15 minutes, kind of like I do in the morning. But I can't just like get up from a post-lunch siesta and like start banging out emails and turning on the phone and taking calls and stuff like that. So usually I'll kind of wake myself up. That's about the time I'll have my second kind of like energy compound of the day. If you want to count my coffee or my cacao tea or my mushroom tea or whatever in the morning. Usually in the afternoon, I'll have anything from leftover coffee or tea or mushrooms from the morning, or these days there's this one energy drink. It's got a molecule called paraxanthine in it. It's called Drink Update. That stuff's pretty sick. It works really well. Like gives you this it's almost like a modafinil-like effect, but it's out of your system in like 4 to 6 hours. So man, it's pretty tasty, and it's got like 15, 20 calories, something like that. And it tastes good and works well. I'll do that, or I'll do a shot of that Feel Free, which is more like kratom, kava, a little bit more like an Islander blend type of stuff. But I do like to have some kind of like energetic compound. What I don't do is anything with a hefty amount of caffeine, just because the half-life's so long. I don't like it floating around in my bloodstream when I hit the sack later on. But yeah, usually, some kind of energy, jump in the cold pool or some kind of energy compound and do a little bit of stretching. And then I just jump into the second part of the workday, and I save a lot of my like phone calls, my reactive work, my emails, my activities that require a lot less in terms of creativity, and the things that I'm able to do even when I might have increased decision-making fatigue or a little bit more tiredness towards the end of the day. So, from the time I get up after lunch from a siesta all the way up until around like 5:30 p.m., so good, from 2 to 3.5 hours, I'm just, banging out all the emails, replying to the messages, interacting with the team, taking phone calls, making phone calls, etc. And then typically around 5:30 or 6, I do something with my sons. These days we're training for a free diving and spearfishing trip. So we're doing breath work. We're going down to the YMCA pool with our masks and our snorkels. We're also training for a bow hunt in Hawaii right now, so we're shooting our bows. Sometimes we'll do a little bit of firearms training with the pistol, or a handgun or a rifle. Sometimes we just go for a walk if Dad's kind of tired. Sometimes, especially in the spring and summer, we play like family pickleball or family tennis. But usually like 5:30 or so is the time when I grab the family and it's like, hey, let's go do something fun. And so we go out and we do that. Typically we're back from whatever activity that is around like 6:30, 6:45. I will spend like 20 minutes right then putting out any last work fires, making sure there's nothing crazy I gotta take care of, respond to. And then sometime between 7 and 7:15, the whole family gathers in the kitchen. And throughout the day, we're typically, so that morning huddle I told you about in our last interview, like that's when we're saying, okay, who's cooking what for dinner? What are we having for dinner? Who's making a salad? Who's doing the starch? Who's on the grill or the oven? What meat do we have? Have we pulled it from the freezer? And the understanding is that by the time 7:15 rolls around, you've like popped up at different times during the day to make sure that what you're contributing to the family meal is like ready. And for me, 9 times out of 10, it's the meat, so I'm cooking wild salmon, or, got a sous vide going with, some pork chop or some steak, or, something on the grill. But what we do is we gather, and my sons and I have a discussion, because I read a lot of books. I read about 3 to 5 books each week, and I typically will assign at least one to them anywhere from every week to every month to read. And so in the evening before dinner is when they fill me in on what they learned that day from the book that I've assigned to them as part of their assigned reading from Dad. I just think it's a really great way to pass on knowledge from interesting books you've found. And so we go through the book, and then I get out my guitar and we sing a song. Usually it's like a hymn or a spiritual song or something like that. And then we do a gratitude practice. We say a prayer, and then we dive in and we load up our plates and we jump into dinner, and we have these big glorious family dinners that are like an hour to an hour and a half long. We play like table topics games. We have family chats. We have like a game closet with over 100 games in it, card games, board games, new games, old games. I mean, all the way down to the point where my sons now are designing their first game and doing a really good job at it, just because they understand game theory so well from playing all these games. It's a really great way to relax at the end of the day. And honestly, like, it's great for kids because they learn rhetoric and argumentation and logic and teamwork and, rules and, just all sorts of cool stuff from games. So we play games for like an hour, hour and a half. And then by then it's typically like 8:15, 8:30. We all clean up the kitchen together. Usually we'll put on some country music, or, just some really great dancing music or something lively. We all clean up the kitchen together. And then my sons, they're like clockwork. Usually like they like to go to bed like 8:45, 9. So they're already kind of slipping up to their bedroom when the kitchen's clean. And while they're all getting ready for bed, that's usually the time I practice guitar or practice violin or play the piano. So it's not long. For me, it's only like 15, 20 minutes that I have available in the evenings to work on music. But it's something, and something's better than nothing. It's like if you did that with writing, you could write a novel a year, with 20 minutes a day. So I like to play a little music in the evening, and then we all gather in my son's room, and I play a song. We do some meditation. We're typically always memorizing something, like a verse or a scripture or a chapter, and so we work on our memorization. We sometimes do breath work. We sometimes do eye gazing, where I'll put on a song and Mom will gaze in the eye of one son while I gaze in the eye of the other, and it's just like lovey-dovey eye gazy talk. And so it's usually about 15 minutes or so that we're in the boys' room meditating, talking, playing music, getting them kind of all ready for bed. And so typically they're kind of lights out around 8:45. Mom and I finish shutting down the house, turn on the alarm, turn off the lights, and then we meet up in the bedroom, and we're either just sitting side by side, reading each of us a good book that we like. Sometimes that's when we'll make love. Sometimes that's when we're just chatting about the day, chatting about life. And usually by like 9:30, 9:45, the very, very last thing we do before we sleep is we say a prayer together, and then we fall asleep. And like her side of the bed, she takes magnesium. She does take one supplement. She takes magnesium, but besides that, she's got nothing. My side of the bed, I've got like the cold water mat that circulates water underneath of you, called the Sleep Me system. I've got the body balance mat, which pulses PEMF all night underneath that. So I'm doing electricity and cold the whole night while I'm asleep. I've got a sleep mask. I've got a phone in airplane mode next to the bed playing nighttime noises that block out all of our roosters and dogs and, you know, cars and things like that. Like I mentioned in our previous interview, I take a little bit of CBD, I take some magnesium, and I take some Keon Sleep. And yeah, so I've got a few things going to actually go to sleep. And both of our bedrooms and our master bathroom, they're all lit with red incandescent lighting instead of overhead bright fluorescent lighting. So it's very conducive to sleep, the lighting scenario. I also, don't laugh Thomas, have a giant Faraday cage canopy surrounding the entire bed. And the very last thing I do when I climb into bed, right before my wife and I say our prayers, is I hit the button on that remote and the Faraday cage closes around the entire bed. And I've tried to make phone calls and text message and everything in there, and you can't do anything with the electronics or receiving or sending anything inside that Faraday cage. So I'm pretty much like cut off from the electronic world for the next 7 hours or so. And yeah, then we say a prayer, and I typically get myself to sleep by doing breathing exercises or prayer combined with breathing exercises. And so yeah, I'm usually like asleep by 10, and then up like, you know, 4:30, 4:45 the next morning.
You know what I like most about that is that you're getting 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep, and you're not here saying that's not enough. That's what, you know, if your routines are ironclad, if your sleep hygiene is ironclad, but the bottom line is, if you are healthy, if you're efficient, your sleep is efficient as well. And I think that there's a lot of sleep anxiety and almost like this, there's so much stress put around sleep right now that I think people are creating sleep problems for themselves. Or they wake up in the morning, they say, oh shoot, I only got 7 hours of sleep. That's not enough. And they frame their entire day by looking through it with those crappy colored lenses, right?
Well, when I was an athlete, like I had to get in. Like when I was racing Ironman and doing Spartan races, like if I was sleeping 6.5 hours, I'd be crushed. Now, sleeping that much and then tucking away after lunch for a quick siesta, which arguably, like if you're doing some kind of like, because for my afternoon siesta, I'll like do a brain tap session or a yoga nidra session or a new calm session. And they claim, those companies do, even though I think the science is weak on this, that in 30 minutes you can simulate close to a full 90-minute sleep cycle. I don't know if that's true, but I can tell you, as long as I get that quick nap in, I'm fine. Now, if I don't nap after lunch and I'm sleeping 6 to 6.5 hours a night, by the time we get to dinner, I'm a tired, hangry bear. Like, and I'm pretty much kind of looking forward to bed. And if the kids choose a game that's very intellectually demanding, I complain about it a little bit, right? So I do have to get that afternoon siesta in, with the only alternative being I would have to take like more of a stimulant in the afternoon to kind of keep myself awake, which works for a few weeks until you get sick because you're just, you know, plummeting through low HRV and, you know, stressed immune system. But ultimately, yeah, 6.5 hours plus a quick afternoon siesta works fine for me. And then, you know, we're Christians. We take a Sabbath day. We rest on Sunday. And so Sundays, I just wake up when I wake up. And yeah, like I'll sometimes sleep 8.5 hours on Saturday night, you know, almost like a catch-up night.
Yeah, and contrary to popular belief, you can make up sleep to a certain degree.
Oh yeah,
I think people.
I also sleep a ton on airplanes. Like when I get on an airplane, I'm just like lights out.
Yeah, that's one thing I can't nail. Now, if you had to say one is more important than the other, would you say evening routine is more important to you than your morning routine because it sets the pace for the next day, or do you think that the morning routine is most important because it's setting the framing for the day?
Morning routine by far. Like, honestly, when I'm out of my element, I'm at a friend's house, we're camping, I'm overseas, I'm traveling, whatever, like, I can sometimes just like get home from a restaurant at 10 p.m., put on my eye mask, you know, take some CBD, and when I'm traveling, a little melatonin, and just like fall asleep without doing all the other stuff. And I guarantee when I wake up the next morning, I'll be doing the stretching and making the coffee and simulating as close as possible the routine that I have at home when I'm on the road, because it just sets this amazing standard for the rest of the day. And if I gotta like be at some conference at a breakfast at like, I don't know, 6:30 a.m. or some ungodly hour, and I don't get a chance to do my morning routine, it's not the greatest day, but if I don't get a chance to do my evening routine, I'm kind of okay. You know, it's not perfect, but you know, I'm fine without the evening routine, but I like to have the luxury of being able to do it.
I think that hopefully gives people a lot of peace in this situation, because I, for one, have been one that's really had to work hard to not become obsessive over my evening routine, because my morning routine is pretty ironclad. I've been doing it for years. And that is my time. That is my time to focus on creative work, and that is my time for my workout, and that is my time for a number of different things depending on the day, depending on what's ahead of me. And it doesn't matter where I am. Same kind of thing. I could be out camping, I could be out in the cuts, I could be out completely backcountry. It's not going to vary more than about 10 or 15% from my norm. Like, I'm still doing most of the same stuff, if not all of it. Evening, I'm just a high-strung person. I've always kind of been wired like that. So in the evening, like if I have extra stimulation, it's very difficult for me to wind down. I absorb energy from other people very easily. I'm quite an introverted person, contrary to what people would think, given what I do for a living. So if I'm around a lot of people, I'm overstimulated. If I'm around more than 2 people, I'm overstimulated. And so I'm very protective of my energy, especially in the evening time. So the way that I've worked around that is, rather than become an obsessive weirdo about my evening routine and just getting super weird, I have just set very simple boundaries. Just like, okay, you know, after usually like 6 p.m. or so, it's just, I'm not engaging in new conversation that's outside of the confines of my family. Like, I really just don't try to engage in anything else. If I have texts coming in, if I have something coming in, I'm just like, you know what, I just need to stop that stimulation. And that's the simple boundary that I just set up, so that I don't get obsessed to the point where if I'm traveling, I can still do that. You know, I'll text my wife at, 6 or 6:30 p.m. and be like, hey, I'm going to shut it down now. I'm just going to wind down. And that simple thing has helped me a ton with the, kind of anxiety around evening routine.
Yeah, I'm going to start texting you at like 7 p.m. just to drive you crazy.
Just to mess with me.
I was like, Ben's calling me again right after dinner. Like
he knows I've got a big filming day tomorrow, so he's just going to stress me out. Yeah, and I've also noticed, a very clear correlation. I don't have a mechanism for it, but any outside sort of stimulation just kills the sex life between my wife and I. If I do shut things down and don't have that external stimulus, we have great intimacy and everything's fine, which has a huge trickle effect on everything else in our relationship. And that's very, very important to me too. Is one thing I've learned over the last couple of years, especially in the last year, is how important intimacy is. Because you look at society in general, like it's pretty pathetic how, whether you're spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, domestic partner, whatever, how limited it really is these days. And that's like my advice when you're having relationship issues, intimacy. A lot of times that will solve it. So that's very important to me. And that's sort of like the net that I have to catch all the other stuff with. I'm like, okay, if I'm not engaging in this other activity, if I'm not engaging in stuff that's stimulating me in a different way, then I can put my focus on my wife, which has just a tremendous umbrella effect on everything else I'm doing the next day. How much, she's able to relax and feel good about herself so that I can feel good about myself and work on things that are going to drive our family forward.
Yeah. I think the one thing that's frustrating for me in the intimacy department, to be frank, is because my clock is really set to get up early. Like, I wake up with, a pretty raging and my wife's still asleep. She gets up at like 7. And so, that's still a nut I have yet to crack, I guess, literally and figuratively, is like, I really want to have sex when I wake up. And then like the few times that she will like oblige if I start feeling her up or whatever, like, it's really hard for a woman when she comes out of a dead sleep to orgasm unless you've been going for a good like 40 minutes or so. So then you're kind of in it for the long haul, and it super delays the rest of the morning. So basically, I don't have a solution for that part yet. But besides that, I agree with you on the intimacy part, and that's a key for our relationship, is just carving out one-on-one date nights, carving out alone time, calling the shots when it appears the house is empty and all the boys are gone, and we're just like, hey, let's get out of our normal routine and head into the bedroom. And so, I think that for us, probably the main keys to our relationship, because we've been married for 21 years, is intimacy, and especially like scheduled intimacy and scheduled dates quarterly retreats for family meeting and family planning, where we just really lock ourselves away to have deep discussions and long walks and a little bit more of a deep dive. The evening prayers are huge because it's really hard to be spiritual together if you're mad at each other. So we, and so typically what'll happen is, like, if we're feeling weird about praying, usually there's something between us that we got to talk about. So that, and then just in general, those family meetings, like the morning and evening meetings. And it's also really great for her because, I'm taking charge, I'm leading the family, I'm getting everyone on the same page and kind of keeping us from being a bunch of, just like, again, chips passing in the night during the day. So yeah, there's a lot of keys to relationships that count. But yeah, you're right, intimacy is a big one.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because if you talk from the male perspective, it's like, oh, intimacy, yeah, I want intimacy. But when it actually comes down to it, and it actually is putting in the discipline that's involved with real intimacy, and sometimes scheduling it, and sometimes doing it when maybe you're not in the mood at a superficial level to do it, then you kind of start falling into the same grain of every other discussion that you can have about discipline with men, especially. Like, everyone wants to be the alpha, everyone wants to do this, but they don't really want to do the work. Or they want to do the work, but when it comes down, they don't know how to lay it down to actually do it. And the same thing applies with intimacy. It's everyone wants to be the intimate alpha. Everyone wants to do that when it's convenient for them, right? And I think that's a very important thing. And I had to learn that too, because it's like, oh, I'm the man in the relationship, it's going to happen. You know what? No, there's a lot of times when, if I'm open to the cues, my wife is hinting it, but if I had not been open to the cues, I never would have realized it. So allowing myself to recognize those cues and realize just I sleep better, and that's not just a physical thing. That is you have solved a major issue that may have been arising in your relationship that you didn't even realize was there.
Yeah, I agree. And then one other little thing, dude, related to travel, like, have her do dirty photo shoots for you and take those pictures on the road. Like, that's saved my butt so many times from just, like, pulling up some random website or getting into trouble when I travel, as I know I got my wife's spank bank, so to speak.
Dude, Chris Williamson just actually posted something about that. I found it was really interesting. Like, there's actually a psychology behind women taking sexy selfies and what it actually does for their psychology. And I mean, it really does make them feel good too. So in the essence of, like, having that go back and forth, that's not like a service just to the man. That's not saying, hey, like, send this to me because it's making me feel good. No, that on multiple levels, on reinforcing the relationship, the confidence in the relationship, but also what it's doing independent of those things for her to actually snap that photo, is getting a dopamine hit in a very positive way. So that's interesting. This is cool. This went a different direction than I would have anticipated, and I think the stuff that people need to hear, because my night team routine, and I know we got to wrap this up here in a second, is very, very simple as far as supplements are concerned. People are always saying, what are you taking for supplements? What are you doing for this? Like, I take 400 or 500 milligrams of dimagnesium malate. Depending on how my diet was throughout the day, I might pop a couple extra cod liver oil, grams or so. That's really it. Like, I mean, I might mess around with some tart cherry juice around dinner time, just because I personally, if I'm doing a lot of endurance activity, specifically, it helps my sleep. If I'm not doing endurance activity, I don't get a huge benefit. And that's it for me. Like, sometimes it might change here and there, but I mean, those are the plug and play. Yeah. Those are pretty much always there.
Yeah, I think simplicity is important, because the last thing you want is to get attached to a bunch of supplements and you're up the creek without a paddle if a bag gets lost when you're traveling or whatever. So the fewer things you can rely upon for evening sleep, the better. Although I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of those high-dose melatonin suppositories.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Dr. Laurence makes for travel. Like, it solves so many problems for travel. I don't do it all the time, but when I travel, for sure, the first couple of nights.
Those are like, I mean, mega dose, right? What's the dose on those?
I sometimes do too, and that's like 600 mgs.
Yeah. Well, and it's I've seen some, I'm careful to go down this rabbit hole, but I was talking to, Dr. Dom D'Agostino about this. There's some pretty interesting anecdotal stuff, even with cancer treatments and high-dose melatonin. And it's some anecdotal, some even beyond that, which, again, I'm cautious to talk about on YouTube because this stuff can get, whatever. But the bottom line is that with, melatonin, that's exactly, whether it's 1 milligram or 600 milligrams, when it's an anomaly, it can have a huge, huge impact. I think, the problem is when it becomes a norm,
you
a consistent norm.
Hypogonadism and testicular shrinkage and like other issues with long-term high-dose usage, but as a little tool in the toolbox here and there for travel, it's pretty amazing. So, yeah.
Well, right on, man. Well, one other thing that I'll add that I do whenever available. If I almost always sauna. I'm a huge sauna guy, so I hit the sauna. Used to in the morning. I do it in the evening now because doing some of the work with the Department of Defense, I learned so much about TBIs and lymphatic system and kind of the intracranial pressure benefit you get of a sauna in terms of actually kind of cerebral brain kind of washing, if you want to get that. Huge impact for me on sleep, huge impact on my recovery indexes when I look at that. I mean, it's like the difference between waking up at I know it sounds elitist to say, but it's like the difference between waking up at a 91 and a 99 on my aura, right? It's like that much of a difference. Now, I used to be sauna in the morning kind of guy, which still has its huge benefits. But for me, if I'm traveling, I have no qualms about hopping in a piping hot bath up to my neck and just getting a good sweat on. I feel like that just sets the tone for my night. I get out of that bath, I cool down, ready to hit the rack. It's just something that I feel like if people have a hard time winding down, if you have a sauna, great. Otherwise, hot bath. There's no real excuse.
Cool, man.
Well, yeah, man, as always, it's a pleasure, dude. I will link out to all your stuff down below, including your new parenting book, which is pretty much available now. I think shipping soon. By the time of this release, it's probably out. BenGreenfieldLife.com, and everyone else, yeah, keep it locked in here. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, Ben.
Sleep tight.